According to the World Health Organization, physical inactivity is one of the leading risk factors for global mortality. And yet, despite knowing that movement is good for us, most adults in developed countries still don't meet the basic recommended levels of physical activity.
That statistic is both unsurprising and deeply uncomfortable because I know I should move more. I genuinely know this. And yet, here we are.
Hello, and welcome to Slow Sip English. I'm Sophie, and this is the podcast where two colleagues sit down with their drinks and have real, relaxed conversations in English. Perfect for anyone who wants to improve their language skills in a natural, everyday way.
And I'm Tom. Today is part one of a special two-part episode on health and well-being. This episode, we're focusing on physical health, exercise, movement, sport, sleep, and all the complicated feelings that come with trying to look after your body in a busy modern life.
Part 2, coming soon, will cover mental health and well-being. But today, the physical stuff. Lots of useful vocabulary in this one. Let's get into it.
So, exercise, the topic that makes half the population feel guilty and the other half feel smug.
That's not wrong. Let's start with the basics. Are you someone who exercises regularly, Tom?
Regularly is a strong word. I go through phases. I'll be really consistent for a few weeks, going for runs, maybe hitting the gym, and then something disrupts the routine, and suddenly it's been 6 weeks and I haven't done anything. It's a very familiar cycle.
The on-again, off-again relationship with exercise. I think so many people relate to that. For me, I've found that the key is finding movement I actually enjoy rather than forcing myself to do things I hate.
What does that look like for you?
I walk a lot. I genuinely love walking, especially on weekends when I can go somewhere with a bit of nature. I do yoga a few times a week, which I find really grounding. And I swim occasionally, though not as often as I'd like. I don't really love the gym as an environment.
See, I actually don't mind the gym. What I mind is getting there. Once I'm in the door, I'm fine. It's that initial activation energy, overcoming the inertia of the sofa, that gets me every time.
Activation energy. That's a great phrase. It comes from chemistry, actually. It's the energy required to start a reaction, and it applies perfectly to exercise motivation. The hardest part is almost always just beginning.
Exactly. And I've read that one trick is to make the barrier as low as possible, like sleeping in your gym clothes, or committing to just 10 minutes, because once you've started, you usually carry on.
That's backed by research, actually, the 2-minute rule. The idea that if you make the start of a habit take less than 2 minutes, you dramatically increase the chance of doing it. You just have to trick yourself into beginning.
I love the idea of tricking yourself into being healthy. Very relatable.
Do you play any sport, Tom, beyond the occasional gym visit?
I play five-a-side football with some colleagues every couple of weeks, which I love. It's social, it's competitive. It doesn't feel like exercise in the way that running on a treadmill does. And I grew up playing basketball in Chicago, so I have a background in team sports.
That's such a good point about team sports. The social element changes the whole experience. You're not just exercising, you're spending time with people, which makes it feel much less like a chore.
Completely. And there's accountability. If you pull out of a match, you're letting people down, not just yourself. That external motivation is really powerful for people like me who struggle with self-discipline.
I've never really been into competitive sport, but I completely understand the appeal. I think what works differs so much from person to person. Some people are energized by competition, others by solitude, others by community.
What's the most unusual form of exercise you've ever tried?
I went through a phase of doing aerial yoga, which is yoga performed in a silk hammock suspended from the ceiling. It was genuinely terrifying at first, and then absolutely wonderful. Very good for your core.
That sounds both amazing and like a recipe for disaster. I once tried a boxerized class, boxing-inspired aerobics, and I was completely humbled. I could barely lift my arms the next day.
The delayed muscle soreness is real. That feeling the day after exercise when you discover muscles you didn't know you had.
There's actually a term for that, DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness, which sounds very official for what is essentially just walking downstairs like a robot.
Let's talk about sleep, because I think it's one of the most underrated pillars of physical health. We tend to celebrate people who sleep less, as if being exhausted is a badge of honor.
The hustle culture thing. I'll sleep when I'm dead, which ironically you'll reach much sooner if you don't sleep enough.
Exactly. Sleep is when your body repairs itself, when your brain consolidates memories, when your immune system does a lot of its most important work. Chronic sleep deprivation is linked to everything from weight gain to heart disease to reduced immune function.
How much do you sleep, Sophie?
I aim for 8 hours and usually get about 7.5. I'm quite protective of my sleep. I have a wind-down routine. I keep my room cool and dark. I try not to look at screens in the last hour before bed.
That's incredibly disciplined. I aim for 8 and usually get about 6 because I stay up too late doing nothing in particular and then feel terrible in the morning. It's a choice I make every night and regret every morning.
That's such an honest answer. Do you ever nap?
I've tried. I can't really nap. I either fall into a deep sleep and wake up confused about what year it is, or I just lie there thinking about things I should be doing. Neither is particularly restful.
There's actually an art to napping. The research suggests that 20 minutes is the sweet spot, long enough to feel refreshed, short enough to avoid entering deep sleep. If you go over 30 minutes, you risk what's called sleep inertia, that groggy, disoriented feeling when you wake up.
So basically, the only good nap is one that ends before it feels like it's really started. Got it.
We should talk about diet too, because it's so closely linked to physical health and energy levels. Though I want to be careful here, nutrition can be a minefield of conflicting advice.
That's putting it mildly. Every few years, there's a new thing that's either going to save you or kill you. First, fat is bad, then carbs are bad, then sugar's the real villain, then everyone's doing intermittent fasting.
It's overwhelming, and I think the constant noise around diet is actually counterproductive. It makes people feel confused and guilty rather than empowered. What I try to do is keep it simple. Lots of vegetables, plenty of water, not too much processed food, and the occasional oat milk latte as a non-negotiable.
The non-negotiables are important. Mine is black coffee and whatever I feel like for lunch. I try to eat reasonably well, but I don't obsess over it. I think the stress of being too rigid about food can cancel out the benefits.
There's real truth in that. Orthorexia, an unhealthy obsession with eating healthily, is a recognized condition. The goal is a balanced relationship with food, not perfection.
Balance. That word keeps coming up when we talk about health. I think that's the honest answer to most of these questions. It's not about being perfect, it's about being consistent enough most of the time. Before we wrap up the main conversation, I want to touch on something that I think is part of the physical health picture, but doesn't get talked about enough: body image. The way we feel about how our bodies look and how that affects our relationship with exercise and food.
That's such an important thing to raise. I think for a lot of people, the motivation for exercise is appearance-based rather than health-based. Wanting to lose weight, wanting to look a certain way. And while that's completely understandable, it can create a really complicated emotional relationship with movement.
Because if exercise is purely about punishment or fixing something, it stops being enjoyable and starts feeling like a chore you can never finish. Whereas if the goal is to feel good, to have energy, to be strong, that's a much more sustainable motivator.
Exactly. And I think social media has made this harder. There's so much imagery of what bodies are supposed to look like, and most of it is completely unrealistic. Heavily filtered, professionally lit, often representing a tiny fraction of natural body diversity.
I've consciously unfollowed a lot of fitness accounts for that reason. Not because there's anything wrong with fitness content, but because I noticed it was making me feel worse about myself rather than inspired. And that's not a useful relationship with any kind of content.
That's a really healthy thing to do. I think being honest with yourself about how certain content makes you feel and making choices about what you consume accordingly is actually a form of looking after your physical and mental health.
We're already crossing into part 2 territory with the mental health stuff.
We are, which just shows how connected it all is. Physical and mental health are not separate. They feed into each other constantly. How you feel in your body affects your mood, your energy, your confidence, and how you feel mentally affects your motivation to move, to eat well, to sleep.
It's all one system, which is maybe the most important thing we've said today. Okay, vocabulary time.
Well said. Okay, shall we go into the vocabulary spotlight?
Let's do it. We've used some brilliant language today.
6 words and phrases to take away from this episode.
First, to go through phases. This means to experience periods of time when you behave or feel a particular way and then change. You might go through a phase of exercising regularly or a phase of eating very healthily before your habits shift again.
Next, activation energy. Borrowed from chemistry, this phrase describes the effort required to start something, whether that's a chemical reaction or getting yourself off the sofa. The activation energy for a habit is often the biggest obstacle to doing it.
Then we have accountability. This is the fact of being responsible to someone or something and having to explain your actions. In the context of exercise, having an accountability partner, someone who expects you to show up, can dramatically improve consistency.
Sleep deprivation, the condition of not getting enough sleep. Chronic sleep deprivation means experiencing this over a long period of time. It has serious effects on physical health, mental health, concentration, and mood.
A pillar, in the context of health and well-being, refers to a fundamental supporting element. Sleep, exercise, and nutrition are often described as the 3 pillars of physical health, the foundations everything else rests on.
And finally, to be consistent. To be consistent means to behave or perform in the same way over time without large variations. In health and fitness, consistency is considered more important than intensity. Doing something regularly and moderately is more effective than doing it occasionally and intensely.
3 reflection questions for you now.
Question 1. What form of movement do you genuinely enjoy or could imagine enjoying? Not what you think you should do, but what actually appeals to you.
Question 2. How would you describe your relationship with sleep? Do you prioritize it, or is it the first thing you sacrifice when life gets busy?
And question 3. What is one small, sustainable change you could make to your physical health this week? Not a dramatic overhaul, just one small, manageable thing.
Those questions are worth sitting with. Physical health isn't about being perfect, it's about building a relationship with your body that's honest, sustainable, and kind.
Really well put. And in part 2, we'll be moving into mental health and well-being, which is just as important, and in some ways even harder to talk about. So do come back for that one.
For now, though, thank you so much for listening to Episode 8, Part 1 of Slow Sip English. Take care of yourselves.
And maybe take the stairs today. Just a thought.
Bye for now.